Most people believe food security begins in spring. They wait for warmer days, longer light, and soil that finally feels ready. They scroll seed catalogs, make lists, and tell themselves they'll start when conditions are perfect. But real food security begins earlier than that. It begins with what you choose to plant this month. Because the difference between a garden that feeds your family all year and a garden that runs out by late summer is not luck. It is timing. This month quietly decides whether your garden will still be producing when grocery prices rise, shelves thin, and weather becomes unpredictable. And today, I want to walk you through exactly what to plant now so your garden continues feeding your family long after most gardens are finished. Not with shortcuts, not with trends, but with a simple system that serious gardeners use to build long-term food security. The biggest mistake most gardeners make is planting for the next harvest instead of the next year. They choose crops because they grow fast, because they look productive early, because they promise quick results. And for a short time, everything feels successful. Beds are full, leaves are green, harvest baskets are heavy. But by late summer, those same beds begin to empty. By autumn, the pantry thins. And by winter, they're back at the store, buying food at the exact moment it becomes most expensive. Short-term planting always creates short-term harvests. Serious gardeners think differently. They aren't asking what will grow first. They're asking what will still be feeding their family when the season is finished. This is how market growers stay consistent, how homesteaders avoid shortages, and how families quietly reduce dependence on grocery stores without dramatic changes. The goal is not to grow more plants. The goal is to build a system where early crops prepare space for later crops, where fast crops protect slow crops, where every bed produces more than once, and everything begins with foundation crops. The first crops you should plant this month are onions and leeks. They are slow, steady, and reliable. They don't demand attention. They don't rush. A single planting can supply essential cooking ingredients for most of the year. They store well, tolerate cold, and quietly build in the background while the rest of the garden develops. Alongside them come lettuce and spinach. These are not planted for storage. They are planted for flow. They give you early harvests while long-season crops establish. They protect the soil from drying. They shade roots. They allow you to harvest while you wait. This stage is not about abundance. It's about stability. Once the foundation is in place, the garden turns toward its working crops. Tomatoes, peppers, beans, cucumbers, and squash form the core of summer food production. But timing matters more than variety. Most gardeners plant everything at once, and when everything ripens at once, they're overwhelmed for a few weeks and empty for the rest of the season. Serious gardeners never plant in a single wave. They plant now, then again 2 weeks later, and again after that. The result is not a rush of harvest, it's a steady flow. Food arrives gradually, preserving becomes manageable, meals remain consistent. This rhythm is what transforms a garden from a hobby into a food system. Now let's talk about the crops that quietly secure winter. Potatoes are one of the most important. They build calories, they store easily, and they provide reliable food when fresh produce disappears. Garlic is just as critical. It builds flavor, medicine, and preservation into your system. One planting can last nearly a year. Carrots and beets fill cellars and cool storage. Cabbage becomes fresh food when almost nothing else remains. Winter squash becomes meals months after harvest. These crops are not exciting. They are not fast. They do not impress visitors. But they determine whether your family eats from your land or returns to the store when the season ends. Food security does not come from harvesting. It comes from keeping. The most important harvest is the one still feeding you when nothing else is growing. And finally come the crops that change everything. The ones planted once and harvested for decades. Asparagus returns every spring without permission. Rhubarb produces when almost nothing else does. Jerusalem artichokes survive cold, neglect, and poor soil while producing enormous yields year after year. These plants are not vegetables. They are infrastructure. They turn land into a long-term food asset. They quietly replace grocery bills. They keep working even when you are busy with other things. This is where true independence begins. Because food security is not built in harvest season. It is built in planning season. It is built when you choose slow crops instead of fast ones. When you choose storage instead of novelty. When you choose systems instead of single harvests. What you plant this month determines what you eat in summer, what you store in fall, and what you depend on in winter. The gardeners who succeed are not the ones who plant more. They are the ones who plant with purpose. Every seed placed in the soil today is a decision about your future. And in a world where food becomes more expensive, more fragile, and more uncertain, a quiet, well-planned garden remains one of the strongest forms of independence a family can build. Plant carefully. Plant with timing. And plant not only for today, but for the year ahead.